There definitely needs to be a change to stand your ground laws. Can't just be letting people, shoot others just because they think they might be in danger or perceive somebody as being dangerous because all it's doing is allowing for people to kill others. And stand your ground laws, if you look at the cases, most of them is used by white people against black people, and they usually get away with murdering black people. And when black people use it, it's it's like 3% of the time they uh, are found to actually be using self-defense compared to, white people.
Space of a single week, 4 young, unarmed Americans were shot, one of them fatally, over simple, everyday mistakes: pulling into the wrong driveway, ringing the wrong doorbell, getting into the wrong car at a parking lot. These high profile cases have reignited the debate over self defense and what justifies the use of deadly force. According to the National Conference of State Legislatures, about 30 states have some form of so-called stand your ground laws. They expand on a person's right to use force if they feel threatened. Robert Spitzer is a professor emeritus of political science at the State University of New York at Cortland. His latest book on U.S. gun policy is The Gun Dilemma: How.
For the most part, self-defense is usually if uh, you had a duty to, try to escape first, and and if you couldn't, you had the right to use self def or a lethal force. But with stand your ground laws, it changes from the moment you feel like you're threatened or you perceive a threat, you can just open fire on anybody.
History is against expanded gun rights. Mr. Spitzer, there are differences from jurisdiction to jurisdiction in these laws, but what's the general principle? What's the general idea of stand your ground laws?
Well, there are two parts to the stand your ground laws that are relevant. The first is the general idea that if you're in a public place and you are attacked or somebody is about to do you grievous bodily harm or even to kill you, instead of leaving this public place, if you could do so safely, which is a standard some states have, stand your ground laws say you can stay where you are and resist force with force, even to the extent of killing the other person. So that's the stand your ground idea, which itself I think is somewhat controversial in legal circles. But there's an added dimension to this, which began when the state of Florida enacted a heightened stand your ground law in 2005 that not only adopted the stand your ground standard, but made it, as they said in the law, an absolute and irrebuttable presumption that an individual who kills or harms another has acted in self defense and cannot be prosecuted. This began the spread of a heightened stand your ground law in many states that changed the legal presumption. So if you make a stand your ground claim, all you need to do is say, I felt that my life was in danger or that I was going to be grievously harmed. And that standard then places the burden on investigators, police, prosecutors to try and make the case that no, you really didn't face the threat you claim. And
Well, that's really that just means that anybody can claim that they felt threatened and just shoot somebody. And if the cops can't prove it, then you can just walk free. That just means you can just go down the street and be like, oh, this, this guy says something. I feel threatened. Boom, boom, boom. Stand your ground law. And then cops can't do anything. It's just like with the two teens that mistakenly delivered or went to the wrong person's house trying to do a delivery. He shot at their car, and he's not being charged because of this. He says he felt threatened or perceived them as a threat, and it's messed up. He could have killed them and gotten away with murder. Florida, that's messed up.
And this shift in the legal standard has really opened the door wide for people to make stand your ground type claims. And in many instances, not all obviously, to avoid any kind of prosecution. And that widening of stand your ground on steroids, or some even call it a license to kill or shoot first laws, that is what has really come to the country's attention in recent years.
Where does this idea come from? I mean, is it
Something I find funny is some people claim that all these spates of, shootings of wrong people or people going to their like wrong house or entering the wrong car or something is because there's a increase in crime and everybody's jumpy and they're tired of the crime, so they want to murder people in order to stop crime, which makes no sense whatsoever.
rooted anywhere in the sort of the history of gun laws in America?
Well, stand your ground laws take an older idea, something called the castle doctrine, an old principle that people may have heard of. The castle doctrine goes back to the Middle Ages. A person's home is one's castle. That is to say, you have a right to retreat into your home and feel safe there. And if somebody intrudes within your home, you're entitled to defend yourself and not leave your home. That idea goes back to the Middle Ages in Britain. It came to the United States, but in the 19th century, another idea evolved, and that was the stand your ground idea. That is to say, if you're in a public place, the principle of the castle doctrine in your home could apply to you in the public realm. That is to say, instead of safe retreat, which is the legal standard even today in many states, you could meet force with force.
The idea behind these, the sponsors of these bills and backers said it was intended to curb crime. Is there any way of telling the result of these laws?
There is zero evidence that stand your ground laws of recent years have deterred crime or improved public safety. And a host of studies, numerous studies, have demonstrated that what we see when these stand your ground laws are enacted is an increase in homicide and gun homicide. Several studies have found an increase between 8 and 11% in homicides in states after they adopt these laws. The state of Missouri.
Yeah, because when you can get off on just saying stand your ground and stuff, more people are going to be willing to use guns against people. So yeah, it's obvious why there's an increase in gun violence in states that have, stand your ground laws because you already have angry people. You got angry people with guns, and then you give them an easy defense to get off on murder. So yeah, they're gonna be shooting people.
Missouri, which has come under focus just in recent days, and adopted a stand your ground law in 2016 and also eliminated pistol permitting for pistol carrying. And indeed, Missouri witnessed an even larger increase in its homicide rate thereafter. In addition, there's a race problem, which is that these laws tend to be administered in an inappropriate way between the races. So if a white person kills a black person, let's say, makes a stand your ground claim, that claim is much more likely to be accepted than the reverse. And there are studies that support that conclusion. So it is deeply problematic. And indeed, law enforcement and prosecutors have generally opposed the enactment of these laws.
And it's easy to understand why white people would get off more easily with stand your ground laws than black people, being that our justice system favors white people over black people, and you can see that with how uh, even within like just black people, the lighter your skin tone, the less time you get in prison. The darker you are, you're gonna be in prison longer, and people are gonna see you worse. So they're gonna, give you a harsher punishment. White people definitely get off a lot easier.
You mentioned permitless concealed carry. These two sort of trends, we've now had the 26th state, Florida, have a law that you don't need a permit for concealed carry. Combined with these stand your ground laws, what is the effect, or what do you think could be the effect?
There's gonna be a large increase in gun violence. Florida wanted to do this to try to combat, gun violence, but yeah, it's just the easier the access to guns that there is without like, proper regulations and training and stuff like that, the more there's going to be gun violence.
Well, it means more civilians owning guns and more civilians carrying guns with them around in society in now 26 states. And civilians lack the training, skill, judgment, and the likelihood of mistakes